I think, do we have a quorum? I believe we do.
I'm just counting. We do have a quorum.
Great,
Yay!
great. Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Emily Simon, and I'm calling to order the meeting of the Social Equity and Racial Justice Commission. For the future, I'm going to suggest that we do a land acknowledgement before we start the meeting. And I would request that either Gina from that Anne send me the one that is used by the city of Ashland, and that Anya send me the one that is used by OSF. I would greatly appreciate it. I don't think we need a motion to do that, but just in case, if everybody would please assent to that or indicate to me that they are, I guess I should get a motion. If somebody would motion it, second it, and then we can vote on it, please.
I would move that we have a land acknowledgement statement at the beginning of every meeting.
Thank
I
you.
second that.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. I would ask that people who are not speaking make sure to mute themselves so that there's no background noise, please, since we're on Zoom. And I would request that somebody make a motion regarding the approval of minutes from February 3rd, 2022.
I'll move.
Do we have a second? Precious seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, are there any opposed? Minutes are approved. Anne, has there been any request for public input?
None.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Lazard, how do I say your name, Joe?
Lassard.
Mr. Lassard, AKA Joe.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. We're very glad that you came to speak with us tonight. And I think that you know from the questions that we asked and the cover email that we want this meeting to be more of a conversation than a strict question and answer period, and hope that you feel as free to ask questions of us as we are apparently feeling free to ask questions of you, so that we can know how to establish a working relationship between you and the commission. So with that in mind, I think that you probably know a little bit about us and our background from the presentation that we made at City Council. But can you tell us about something more, a little bit about you, whatever you'd like to share about your background, why Ashland, why you're drawn to this job? Just have at it.
Well, thank you for having me this evening. I guess I think my story is pretty boring, but I'll share just one or two little things. I first became interested in public service in 6th grade. I had been living in Reno, Nevada as a child. My father actually managed a casino when I was very young, which is sort of an interesting place to be brought up when your parents work in the gambling world. But and he eventually left that, opened a child care center. And when I was 10, they decided that they were going to leave Reno and move to Washington State. In 6th grade, I went to my first, well, actually, it's not my first. I went to a public school for the second year of my education. Before that, I was in parochial school. And we actually had the class was organized so that we actually elected officers. And it was the first time I'd ever seen democracy in action close up. And I remember I ran for class president, lost twice, the first 2 semesters, and I finally won my 3rd semester. So for a whole semester, I got to be class monitor when the teacher left the classroom. That was my big excitement for my first public service. But I really, there was something about that idea of public service that just stuck with me. And when I got to college, I my program orientation was, my major was public administration. After college, I worked on a farm for a couple of years. I ended up going to graduate school and in public administration, the School of Public and Environmental Affairs in Indiana. From there, Dallas for 4 years with the city and another 4 years in the private sector. And then Austin for 9.5 years as an assistant city manager. When I left the city organization, I decided to stay in Austin to continue there for a while. So I went into consulting, and I basically continued the kind of work I was doing as an assistant city manager, which is a large organization. At that level, you do a lot of strategic planning, strategic finance work, strategic project management, a fair amount of intergovernmental relations. So I just continued on doing that kind of work for a number of years. My wife and I decided that if I was ever going to pursue my idea of getting back into local government, it was about time I got my acting gear and did it. So we decided we were willing to look around the country, and having been in the Northwest before, I was very interested in coming back to this part of the country. And so when Ashland position came up, I thought, I've been there, I've driven through Ashland a couple of times. It's a beautiful location. It's in the Northwest. It sounds like a good opportunity. So I applied, and here I am. So that's the 5-cent version of my life and how I ended up in Ashland.
Well, for the 7-cent version, okay, if you could tell us, because what you just said was that most of your experience, as I heard it in the last number of years, has been as a consultant. So my question is what areas and issues have excited you and really made you want to dig in?
Well, I guess what quite often happens when you're working on strategic issues, a lot of them, you get the opportunity to work on projects that really have I guess I'd call them legacy projects that have long-term benefits to the community, that are really, sometimes they're major turning points in how a community deals with certain issues. And when I worked for the city of Austin, I had the opportunity to work on 2 or 3 what I would consider legacy issues. And so in the private sector, I really sort of continued that effort. I worked on the Lone Star Rail District, which is an entity that's created under state law in Texas to put an intermunicipal rail line between the city of Austin and the city of San Antonio. And for a number of years, that project had languished because they had not been able to figure out how to finance that project. And because my background included a fair amount of governmental finance work, they asked me to help them do outreach to all the local communities along that rail line. It's a 120 miles long rail line that they were trying to implement, and solicit funding from the local jurisdictions. And if you're an outside entity and you're trying to get money from a local government, that's kind of a hard sell. So they had worked for about a decade and hadn't gotten anywhere. And so I helped them. Now the project actually eventually couldn't come to an agreement with the Union Pacific Rail line to acquire the railroad line that they were hoping to. So that project, at least during my time in Austin, fell apart. But over my tenure with them, I think I was able to solicit and secure funding from the Austin Community College District, the city of Austin, the city of Bastrop. I was in the process of working out an agreement with the city of San Antonio. I was able to basically break the logjam in helping them seek financial assistance from all these local jurisdictions, and move ahead in how to fund at least the operations of that rail line when it would be implemented. that would have been a huge legacy issue in Central Texas. It would have changed the relationship between San Antonio and Austin. It would have brought in all the intermediate communities into an economic development relationship that would have really altered Central Texas in a big step forward. And I enjoyed that legacy aspect of it. And several of the projects I've worked on in my career have been like that. I like that big change, big step forward opportunity. I guess that's what I dig in on, and that's what kind of has motivated me in my career to a great degree.
Thanks, Joe. So DEI can be seen as a fairly new concept within the structure of governments and municipalities. I think the most recent issue of the City Manager magazine, or whatever it is that is the periodical, featured DEI, and I think it might have been the first time that it did it. Have you had any experiences working with DEI issues, and if so, what were they?
I guess the answer is yes and no. My experience with the city of Dallas, I wasn't involved in it. And by the way, the thing I liked about that article, I remember there was one of the folks that was interviewed talked about the DEI really is about belonging. And I really thought that, as a matter of fact, I liked that statement so much. There was a little 3-circle diagram that talked about inclusion, equity, diversity, and that they all intersect in belonging. And I clipped it out and I put it up on my bulletin board here in my office to remind me of that, because I think belonging is really what we as humans crave, no matter who we are or where we live. But anyway, my experience is limited based on the way hiring and procurement activities were undertaken by governments during the earlier part of my career. As you said, I've been in consulting for 20, 25 years. So I haven't, as a consultant, I really didn't have to work in that realm. But when I was with the city of Austin, it was really important that the city organization reflect the character of the city. And there had been a great lack of diversity in the organizational structure. I was hired by a city manager named Camille Barnett, Dr. Camille Barnett. And Dr. Barnett was probably one of the smartest people I've ever met or worked for in my life. She was one of these people that when she walked in the room, and it didn't matter how many hundreds of people were in the room, when she walked in, 5 minutes later, everybody knew that the smartest person in the city had walked into the room. That's how impressive she was. And she stressed that we had to do what it took to do outreach and find people who could work for the city of Austin that reflected the community. So we really began major efforts to rethink how we did the hiring practice, the outreach efforts. We broadened the scope. We've really found actually that at that time, recruiters weren't that helpful. So we did the process in-house. And I personally would have to sit and go through all of the applicants myself to try to screen through and try to identify how do we make sure the pool that we're considering this position was diverse. And I think we had some success in that effort. The other part of that effort back in my experience was in procurement. Again, an effort where minority or women businesses weren't represented in a lot of ways in the procurement process. And so we did studies to identify how we could improve our efforts to make sure that we gave them the type of consideration that they needed to have an equal footing with other businesses. And so that was a big push. But in terms of what's happened in DEI, at least my perception of it is that it's become much more, the effort has been much less of a sort of for lack of a better way of saying it, a catch as catch can approach. It's become much more about institutionalizing the considerations so that they aren't just sort of, well, we decided we would do it this way, that it actually is the way you actually conduct your business on a normal basis. It's become more structured, more focused, more broad reaching. And in that regard, that's why I say yes and no. I think I have experience, but it certainly isn't at the level that DEI has matured to it at this point.
So Joe, we know that you're brand new, okay, and that you must feel like you are getting hit by thousands, thousands, it is Ashland, hundreds of different requests from different people. And we're wondering how we can help you regarding the issues of DEI here in Ashland and work together to accomplish the purposes behind the commission. And I'm wondering if you've given that any thought, or where you see this commission going, or where you see DEI going, or just sort of what are your thoughts about DEI within this small city that we live in that is perceived as very white?
I don't think it's a perception. I think it's the reality in that this community, I don't think has really thought about in a lot of ways the importance of diversity. It just takes all kinds of people to make a community and a civilization, a democracy work. And so I think the work that you're taking on for the city is very important. It's easy to come up with simple answers when you come from only one kind of background. It's the more complicated reality of what America should be about that is kind of the work that you're about, and bringing it home to Ashland and to this organization. So it's no easy task, and we need all hands on deck for it. But I guess the things that I think about, and again, just having been here, this is I think my 9th week in Ashland. There are a couple of things that I think that strike me. It seems to me that our institutions are siloed. That since I've been here, I don't see the university student the life, and of course, remember, I've only been here 9 weeks. I don't get the same kind of vibe that I get in most university towns that I've been in, that there's this sense of acceptance and openness because everybody is out on the street and they're all visible and present and active in the community. It feels to me like the students here are on campus, but I don't get that sort of energy that I would have sort of expected to get here. It feels like the university community to me is sort of siloed away from a lot of the community. And I think so finding ways to bridge that and to bring that vitality into the community would be a real exciting thing to see happen. So finding ways and your recommendations on how what the city can do, what I can do, I guess, is really the point here, to create a different cultural orientation, to broaden the cultural orientation, because I think because it feels siloed, it doesn't feel as welcoming as it could be. So that's one thing. How to partner and how to break through. If I'm right, you can tell me. Actually, maybe I should stop there and ask you if I'm right. Is siloing in the community an issue, and or am I off track?
Would somebody else like to take that on the commission? Precious.
Hi, thank you for your inquiry and comment. I'm a professor at Southern Oregon University. I think that one of our challenges right now is the pandemic, that half of our students are still online. I'm completely teaching online. Other professors have moved to in person, depending on what their comfort level is with the pandemic. But I would say that Southern Oregon University, it does try to reach out in different ways. If you, before the pandemic, when it would be the Southern Oregon Pride Parade, you would definitely see the presence of the university. And the university also has challenges too of sometimes involving themselves in different types of community maybe projects. There is sometimes a gap between what we're doing on campus and what's happening in the local community, but it's also kind of two ways. Sometimes our university tries to invite the local community, but for some reason, people don't always attend or the message gets out too late. But I would say that one of the things that's really exciting that's happening is that, first of all, we do have our DEI Vice President who will be attending our commission meeting next week, Toya Cooper. And then also, we've also have a social justice type of group that has been developed for student life more recently, who has also, and I'll talk about it later, wants to reach out to our group and have our social equity, racial justice group participate in a type of conversation that they've been wanting to have. And a lot of these things have been virtual lately because of the pandemic, but I'm hoping that the longer that you are in the position, your position, that you'll be able to see the involvement between SOU and our local community. And I think right now a big concern is just the restrictions on our campus about the pandemic, that it's across our campus that faculty, students, staff, everybody, they have to have proof of vaccination. So being able to invite our public onto campus is not something that is able to happen right now because we're so strict in terms of our own community following these certain mandates and rules within our university. But you will definitely be the first to be invited when we have some events, and our committee as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I just, that's helpful. I guess I wasn't seeing the visual cues, and so that made me think about that. But I think that, I guess the kind of getting back to the original question, that what would be helpful for me would be, any assistance or advice you could give me about partnering, how to, if there are on this topic, at least, if there are issues that would be helpful for me to be aware of and think about how to partner with the university or partner with the Shakespeare Festival or partner with the school district, that the major institutions, I think, could learn a lot and to kind of evolve a process or evolve our understanding together. I think that would be helpful. I think if there's anything else, I think one other thing that would be helpful for me, and being selfish, I'll be selfish here and tell you all the things that would be helpful for me, is we are in the process of trying to fill a couple executive positions at the city. I assume you're aware that we have an acting finance director. We have a vacancy as of this week in our human resource director. And I think in doing outreach and hiring, I think there may be some things that you could advise us on. My sense of how we do our hiring process or we post is sort of minimally adequate. Let me put it that way, that I don't think our positions get put out as broadly as I would like to see them put out and advertised. I really think we're going to have to solicit on a national level to fill those positions. And I think it's important that we get a diverse pool of candidates. So if you have advice on that can help, I know that I want to use the International State Managers Association, which has a fairly assertive effort for DEI. But if you have some other advice on where I could go to, make sure that our information is available to other entities or individuals that may not normally see it, I really would appreciate that kind of help. Let me think. I guess those are I'm looking at my notes here. Those are the two things that sort of struck me. I think I will mention one other thing. We have a number of boards and commissions. I think it's important that those boards and commissions are also diversified. I think that the participation and representation of the whole community, it's important that I really haven't, I really haven't looked to see what the membership is. I haven't had that opportunity at this point, but I would just mention, I know that that's one thing in some of the reading I've been doing in the city manager world, that's a key issue to really have a good assessment of your community and understand how everyone is invited to participate. I think that's one other area that perhaps you could help us with. But those are the items that I have kind of on my my short 9 weeks here that are on my list of things that perhaps we could work together on.
Anya, I think I saw your hand. Did I?
Nataki's was up before mine, and then I'll go.
Okay, thank you. Nataki and good. Nataki and then Anya, following my cue.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Emily, and nice to meet you, Joe. My name is Nataki Garrett, and I am the artistic director of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I look forward to getting to know you a little bit better over your time here. One of the things, I've been here since 2019, and one of the things I noticed was there seems to be a line of demarcation down the middle of this town. Like on one side, there's this sort of focus on maybe tourists and like the people who like to go to OSF and that kind of a thing. And on the other side, there's this this other town that happens that perhaps includes the high school kids or the folks who go to SOU or the faculty that's involved there. And there seems to be it's an unwritten line, but I have the same thought that you did when I first arrived. I was like, this is a college town. Where are the college kids? They're on the other side of the line. And there are ways in which the city can actually shift. First of all, it's like expensive. You come downtown, you can't really, your dollar doesn't go as far if you're a college student. It actually doesn't go as far if you're not affluent. And so that's a part of the demarcation. And I think the other thing is about transportation and making sure that there's a way to get from there's a park of trailer homes down at the end of town. If they could get all the way back down and back home, I think that there's this way in which the town operates around sort of creating a line. And I think to be really conscious about, cities are planned in a way to be that way. And so as you're thinking about ways to shift, I started to think about how was it constructed and why was it constructed in those ways? And what is it trying to keep safe and hold? And what is it trying to bar from coming through? And those are always my first questions when I'm in a college town that doesn't actually center the college. And then the second thing is about the trying to employ a broader and more diverse, inclusive pool of candidates for the positions that you're posting. I think to really think about what are the things that turn people away from applying for jobs in places like this and in these sort of rural places, especially for people of color. Is it a welcoming place? And welcoming is more than just, do we say, yes, you can come and live here, but what are the ways in which the town has really focused on making sure that it has a kind of cultural competency for inclusion. And I think that that's part of why we're having the same experience at OSF. Often we have to work to make sure that we have a diverse pool of applicants because, there are some fears about what it means to move here. If you're a person of color or a person with a disability or, a person who is marginalized in any way. And so to really think about those factors and in the employment document, perhaps saying these are the ways in which we're going to shift, we're going to really work hard to shift this community so that you could come and be a part of what we're doing. And I think that's what we had to do. We had to be like, this is what we're doing to make it so that this would be a place for you. We're going to shift the way that we exist so that you could come here. And I think that might be a way to look at some of the documents. Thank you. It's really nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nataki, for a very true and concise picture of life in Ashland. I've been here for way more since 2019. And Joe, I have to tell you that that was summed up for how it's been for the last 20 years and how it will continue to be unless we all work together to change both how the city of Ashland presents itself in terms of internally, in terms of the things that you're working on to make it different. And just saying that we now have a commission isn't enough. So I don't mean to be piling on. I just mean to say, I think it's deep work that needs to be done in everything. Anya, you wanted to say something.
So a few things, and nice to meet you, Joe. I'm Anya, or Anya Naya Muse, and so I am the equity director, I think, as you know, at OSF. And I am one of those people of color who moved to this town, who, just to give a little bit of background, so I have family in Eugene, Oregon that has lived here, multiracial family that's been in Oregon for upwards of 50 years, and was always the Black family on the block, or the mixed race family on the block for many, many years. And it has, in the time that I've engaged Ashland, I think as an adult, I have a much better understanding of what I was experiencing and witnessing as a kid when I would come from California to visit. I've also lived in places like Austin, Texas, and like Starkville, Mississippi, like Boonville, California, all that have these very different kind of similarities to Ashland in terms of affluency, but also being in these rural spaces, Austin being much different, but also there's a level of affluency, I think, in Austin for the most part, and the way that the city was planned, right, is in this very clearly segregated way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think what I have both experienced in my personal and professional life around living here, what you're bringing up in terms of hiring and where you are, I think you're actually in a really good position, as unsettling as it may seem. If you are actualizing the work of getting a DEI manager eventually, if that is the goal that you decide to commit to, it's good that you're also getting a new HR director. And it's good that you're also looking at other executive leadership at this time. One of the most difficult and challenging things to do is to try to hire a DEI manager with the old guard in. And that is just a very, very real and political and deeply problematic move to make when you are trying to bring somebody in to help switch the culture or shift the culture of any organization, especially in a very small town that also is full of affluence. So I have suggestions. I think one of the things that you think about investing in is maybe a search firm for executive leadership that specializes in doing work around belonging and equity and inclusion. I think looking at the Institute of Othering and Belonging at UC Berkeley is a huge opportunity. There's also a propensity for us to hire people. We want seasoned people, which usually means we're looking for people of a certain age. And so we hire based on ageism rather than sheer or clear qualifications. The National Urban Fellows, CORO, both out of California and New York, have brilliant candidates for public leadership positions. So I think there's a huge way that you could think about increasing your net, or casting a wider net in the people that you could look to hire. And I also think that as you think about how you're building your own city infrastructure, that the consideration for where ultimately you think about that DEI manager, if that is what's going to be actualized, as you're making those executive leadership decisions, you think about where that position would sit with those people. You can make that a part of your hiring structure, being able to ask people who are coming in how would they work with or manage or lead a DEI manager? Have they ever worked with a DEI manager before, where they're coming from? So I think those are ways to be thinking about how you make the shifts that you want to make in terms of city infrastructure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, my co-chair Anya, and thank you for also bringing up the words DEI manager, because that was going to be my next question. As you might have heard, Joe, at the city council,
Mhm.
our recommendation was that the city hire a DEI manager. And I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on this, what our next step should be, if there's a way we can work together on that. Just what are you thinking? If you feel comfortable sharing that.
Well, first off, Emily, I don't believe you were just wondering. I think you want to know specifically.
Yeah, I do. You're right. You're right. Good observation.
Right now, I have to tell you where I'm spending my time right now. And I'll be just totally honest. Right now, my focus is on trying to figure out how to balance the city's budget. And I probably will be engaged primarily in that and filling these positions for the next, I'd say 3-4 months. I'm still trying to understand what has happened in our budget, why we have a structural problem, and coming up with recommendations on or approaches on how to solve that problem. I'm just now starting to spend time looking at our organizational structure, where we've been, where we're going from a staffing analysis. I guess at this point, I don't know the answer on hiring a DEI person. I know that I need to do something on DEI. I don't know yet what I can afford when I'm not sure I can even afford to hire the clerical position that sits outside my office. We are bringing on board a deputy city manager who was one of the other candidates for my position. I almost considered not filling that position simply because I just don't know yet where my budget sits. And I know that in this biennium, I'm at least $1 million, somewhere between $1 million and $1.75 million out of budget. So I'm going to have to be creative. I'm going to have to figure out how to address that problem. But at the same token, I don't want to leave the DEI effort on the side of the road. I don't want it to be this issue that just falls off the track. So you're going to have to give me a little more time to be as specific as you'd like me to be. But I'm not going to set it aside. I just need to be able to understand how it fits into everything else that the council is going to have to consider. That said, I guess in the hiring process, I do agree that I've got to have a team that can accommodate change, that is looking for change and represents the change. So that's sort of my first priority there, and that plus the budget is what's really taking up my time right now. I think that I'd like to come back to you on that question in the future and sort of say, here's what I think we can do, and talk to you about how we make something happen. But I don't have a specific answer right now.
I appreciate your honesty, Joe. Thank you. And I want to, before I turn it over to all questions, and commissioners, I'm going to let this go longer than the allotted time because I think it's really helpful. So I'm just making that clear. So Joe, there is something else that we recommended that I don't think I don't think it has any budgetary impact. I don't think it is potentially as complex as hiring a DEI manager, and it's the culturally competent calendars. So at the top of page 4 of our report is, and I just think that this is really emblematic in terms of why DEI is not just a check off, and then we say it's done, that we recommended that the city council direct you to ensure that a calendar which includes all the religious holidays be integrated into the master Outlook calendar and used by all city staff. Because what happens now is that meetings within the city get scheduled on religious and culturally sensitive days, and there's no listing on the Ashland calendar outwardly facing that says anything about a holiday other than your, excuse me, I hope I'm not offending anybody, other than your standard white Christian holidays. And I think that's a problem. And in terms of getting that fixed, as we understood it, is what happened is that human resources correctly and thankfully informed staff how to add religious holidays to their desktop Outlook calendars, but that the IT director was exploring how to integrate those religious holidays into the master Outlook calendar. And that's it. That's what we know. We don't know where that went. We don't know if there's any barriers to actually getting this accomplished. And we've been dealing with this since the moment we were formed. So I'm dropping it now in your lap, because what happened was everybody kept saying to us, wait until we have a real city manager. Well, now we do, we have you. So therefore, I'm dropping it in your lap because I don't see where this is a budgetary issue. I don't see where this is even a staffing issue. I just see that this is something that could get done and we would accomplish something for the rest of the world as well as for the city of Ashland.
Okay.
So this is my pitch.
Okay. Well, let me explain something to you. First off, this is now a city manager form of government. I don't agree with your recommendation because I don't think I need the city council to tell me to do it. I think it just needs to be done. And under the city manager form of government, we will take up this issue. So I don't think I need direction to act as an executive and make a decision to implement it. I'm meeting on Monday with the director of our IT operation to talk about a number of issues. Our website, we're in the process of trying to implement our website. And it may very well be that the fact that he hasn't implemented it is because I've been pulling him in a different direction, trying to get the new website up. But I will raise this issue with him specifically, and I don't think the council needs to direct me. I just think we need to do it.
I completely agree. Thank you for that answer. And I look forward to hearing what happens on Monday.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners in general, like I said, I'm going to go longer on this because I want to make sure that everybody who has other questions, kudos, problems, criticisms, congratulations, all of the things I normally say when I'm inviting input, have the opportunity to speak up at this time while Joe is here, and making sure that our time together is meaningful. So does anybody want to say anything else at all? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, I think that maybe then I'm going once, going twice, 3 times, gavel's coming down. We're done for the moment, Joe. I am sure we will want to speak to you again. And whenever you want to talk to us, please just tell Ann.
I thank you for the opportunity to meet with you. And I'm sure we'll be meeting again, hopefully not too far in the future. And if there's any of the questions that I posed about helping me with the process, if you come up with any ideas that didn't come up tonight, I was scribbling notes as fast as I could. Please feel free to email me. It's joe.lessard@ashland.or.us. And that's spelled Lessard. And my phone number, and I haven't memorized it, so I have to read it off my card here. My phone number is 541-552-2103. If I don't pick up, please leave me a voice message and I'll try to get back to you.
Thank you very much, Joe. And I anticipate you may be hearing from some of us.
Okay, all right. I look forward to it.
Okay,
I'll say good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
thank you.
Bye now.
Okay. So where we're at now on the agenda is, oh, this is a good one. It's a subcommittee on participation in special events. So this is Precious getting ready to go now, teeing up. And, oh God, that's a terrible expression. I'm sorry for using a golf expression. Getting ready to talk, and and Precious, if you would also please, while you're talking, remind us of what you had suggested regarding how we could get together now that the world has changed in terms of mask requirements, et cetera. I know you had an idea that at the time was sort of zoomed, was not as up to date as we are now. So please have the floor for the next 30 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to try and take time and make sure that we have 3 main topics that we talk about, and we'll talk about it for 8 minutes each. So if I do kind of bring you back in to go on to the next topic, please don't be offended. I'm just trying to make sure that we get all 3 topics discussed today. And our subcommittee is Julie and Sherry and myself. So the 3 main topics I'm going to talk about is how can our committee get to know each other a bit better, since we've only had this opportunity to meet on Zoom. The second one is which holidays or events would we like to participate in? If we can participate in around 2 each year, what are the ones we like to participate in? And the third one, which is also really important, is how do we document or archive the ways that we've been participating in events or different types of leadership that we've been involved in? Because not just from an academic perspective, but in a general perspective, it is important to archive, document, and be able to trace the way that our committee as a whole has been able to make some change throughout time. So we'll kind of move from the lighter topic to maybe some of the more deeper topics. The first one that I wanted to talk about, and of course, Julie, Sherry, and anybody, please feel free to jump in, is the ways that we could get to know each other. And during our meeting back in January, we're going to be meeting next week as a subcommittee, but our subcommittee meeting in January, we talked about, well, how can we get to know each other? You know, it's been so limited in the ways that we've been able to engaged because we're on Zoom. We don't have these different types of chats that we could have before or after our meetings to have some casual conversation, but also some meaningful and deep conversation. And I thank Anne for reminding me of ways that if we are going to have different ways where we wanted to address our group of different online material or different things that you would like to know about ourselves or our cultures or events, to email her, and then she can email it all out to our group. I was trying to experiment with some ways, and one of the ways that I experiment with, which I should have emailed Anne so she could have sent it out, was just making a 30-minute video of what it looked like for 6 generations of my own Japanese American family, so you could get to know me and maybe my culture a little bit. Our committee, we talked about, well, what are some virtual options? Maybe we can cook a dish from our culture and send that video out, and that would help people on our committee get to know each other. But there's also ways now that we're moving more into person that are possibilities based upon your own comfort level, of course, and we all have different comfort levels. So I do want to take maybe 4 minutes or so to talk about ways how we like to get to know each other as a commission. whether it's virtual or in person.
Am I seeing any hands for thoughts about that? Sherry?
Well, understanding that right now numbers are down and hopefully COVID numbers stay down and don't go crazy again when the mask mandates are lifted this month. And it's sadly getting into spring. So the weather may be a little bit, I mean, it was 60 something last week. So I think it's possible, at least in the realm of possibility, to revisit what we talked about back in the fall, which was kind of a meeting, right? A public meeting in an open space without a particular agenda, right? Because if we're all meeting, my understanding is that makes it a notice, has to be a noticed meeting then. So we would notice it and whoever wanted to come could come in the public as well. And it would give us an opportunity just to hang out. I mean, I think it's fair to revisit that again. Anne, am I correct that if we all meet together in any form or fashion, it's a noticed meeting?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it would be considered a meeting, but it would be a commission meeting and the only topic on the agenda would be get to know one another or social meeting or some such thing.
Right. So I think it's worth revisiting that in the next, month or so, maybe to see what the days getting a little bit longer, the weather getting a little bit nicer. Hopefully, like I said, the COVID numbers staying down, so it feels safer to be together in an open space to do that. 'Cause it seems like that's one of the better ways to really get to know each other. I personally stress out when I hear about videos and things because that stresses me out, like to make one, right? And that's where for somebody else it's going to be really easy. For me, it just makes me want to run from the room, sort of screaming. So I'm trying to think of ways that, is stress less or as stress-free as possible for all of us.
I get stressed out at the thought of making food for anybody other than myself at 7:30 in the morning. So whether it's Yiddish food or Jewish food or toast, I don't cook for anybody else, and I consider toast cooking. So with that in mind, I am all for us getting together for anybody who wants to come in a public environment, either at the Roasting Company Coffee House. They have a really nice sort of patio area, or if we want it to be more private, perhaps there's another idea. And I'm usually not for doing doodle polls because I think they take forever. But in this circumstance, so that we could give people a range of times to come, I would ask that Anne do a doodle poll for a time to see if we could get people together just to meet, greet, and mingle.
And yeah, so
Sure.
I think the idea of introducing each other and the community to our cultures, right? Because these are all open meetings. I think that's certainly something we can work with. I mean, there's nothing that says there can only be one meeting. There's nothing that says there can't be some of these throughout the year. If someone says, hey, I've got a holiday coming up and I do love to cook these foods. Let's have an open meeting to enjoy them. And I think we can get creative. I think we get really creative with as long as it's safe to be in space together.
Okay, first Ann Cowden, then Ann Seltzer, and I have to make a comment. I love to eat other people's food that they cook. This is not, I don't like to eat with you. Okay, Ann Cowden, Ann Seltzer.
I realize that the timing, at least with weather around here, could be dicey being outdoors, but I think that welcoming spring and our freedom from COVID to a large extent would be a wonderful celebration. Kind of a festival of once again being alive. Look at him, you know, being able to get together and again allow people to make that judgment, as you said, on their own, whether they feel comfortable. But you know, a picnic in Lithia, some kind of gathering that could be well publicized, that people could bring food, as you, other than Emily, of course, unless you want to bring toast here. And, you know, but we could make it very much a, you know, things we love to cook that would be enjoyed by many people. And again, a way of introducing culture vis-a-vis that. And we could maybe do it with SOU and OSF and maybe just, you know, make it a slam bang nice little festival that could happen. I think that all of us are very tired of being isolated in one way or the other, and it would be nice to welcome spring in that way. And I'm willing to work on something like that. So that's always good to hear, right, Emily?
Oh, yeah. Okay, Ann Seltzer, please.
So I just want to be sure that you understand that while public meeting law allows you to gather like this, to have a gathering, a meeting, and it's noticed, the public is also allowed to attend. So you couldn't have a private something or another. The public would be there, they'd be mingling around, and which is fine, and you couldn't be talking about decision-making or something. But I just wanted to make sure that you understand that you can't be private, it has to be open and the public would be able to attend.
So I'm hearing two different things. I'm hearing, and maybe I'm getting this wrong, I'm hearing Ann Cowden suggesting that we have a bigger, broader event. And what I had suggested was a small, more intimate event for us so that we could at least have the opportunity to talk to each other on a more one-on-one basis, understanding that more people could potentially be there. Anne, have I misunderstood what you were saying? Because I just saw your hand go up.
I don't see them as exclusionary. I think we could have an initial, let's all get together to get to know each other better. And then from that, we could talk about having some kind of gathering that, you know, has more people, has our families. The best way to get to know people is vis-a-vis their families and what their background is and what they bring and what they're excited about, and what they're passionate about. So I can see one that's just us and then one that's a much broader, because I think that's kind of what Joe was kind of reflecting is, you know, he's been here 9 weeks and it's like, where is Ashland? How do I define Ashland? What, you know, how do I kind of make the changes you guys are talking about? And one way is that we talk more.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks, I appreciate that. Gina.
You're muted, Gina.
I'm just talking away to myself. So I was questioning because if you just wanted to get together as a commission and have that initial meet and greet, I thought, you know, we could always do the hotel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's an indoor space.
No, we have the English Garden at Ashland Springs Hotel, which is an outdoor space, pretty lovely. Then at Ashland Hills, there's outdoor space also. So, and there's one in the front of the hotel and there's one in the back on the patio. So there's different opportunities. However, do keep in mind, having at the hotel, you cannot bring in your own food or beverage. So I was thinking for an initial, just for the commission to meet, I thought the hotel might be a nice fit, so.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your suggestions. And I will put this on to our next agenda for our subcommittee to talk about different options. But this really helps to listen and to hear some of your suggestions and comfort level. Just so we have enough time, I'd like to move on to the next part, which is picking 2 possible events that we would like to participate in. Last meeting, I was able to kind of briefly introduce the idea of our commission, introducing ourselves maybe to the public through the Southern Oregon Pride Parade, which happens in October, which I think would create some great visibility and also participation of our commission to be able to participate in that event, which is so celebratory. But that leaves open the other possible events, and some suggestions or things that we talked about were not necessarily participating in big holidays that people might know about, maybe some of the smaller holidays that are important to you or important to members of our community. Also, it doesn't always have to be in the form of a parade or that type of, sorry, that's my baby, participation, but being able to participate, whether it's through like media outlets, JPR, print media, or at joining with different organizations. So one of the examples I thought about is Southern Oregon University in March. They always have the Cesar Chavez Leadership Conference, in which they invite the high school Latinx students from our regional communities to come to SOU and to participate in workshops. They have like a dance, all these different types of things. And even from our commission, if we wanted to have a workshop, this is just an example of different ways to participate. And of course, because I work at SOU, the SOU events that are already organized come to mind, but also events that may be OSF or AIFF or the different organizations or religious affiliations or cultural organizations that you're involved in might have a pathway or a way that we could participate. And it doesn't have to be the whole commission, but maybe a couple of people. So opening that up to conversation for a few minutes. And then also, if you don't think of it right now, you could always email Julie, myself, or Sherry with your ideas. But opening up, what's the event that we would like to possibly participate in this year or even maybe next year?
Well, I, of course, want to participate in Gay Pride, and I want there to be a Gay Pride parade again. You know, that's a really deep personal thing for me. So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Yes, Gina.
There is going to be a 4th of July parade in July. And hopefully there will be a Pride parade in October. It is on the books. Things are coming in, you know, together. However, you know, we thought we were going to do something last year and we didn't. So, but this is hopeful. So the first thing that I know of is the 4th of July parade.
Okay,
Thank you,
Gina, excuse me, I'm just jumping in because I really have to say this. If there is an opportunity for us to be in the 4th of July parade, I think maybe I'm the person who's lived in Ashland the longest in this room, I'm not sure. We need to be in that parade. It's crucial for the way in which we are viewed and legitimacy that we want to have. We need a banner, City of Ashland, and we need to be in the parade. No matter what we think individually about celebrating the 4th of July and what that means. Okay, so I'm just laying that out there because I know that it could potentially be an issue. And in another city, in another environment, it would be an issue for me, but not in Ashland. And we can talk more about it later if we need to. Okay, Ann Cowden, I saw your hand.
I think Julie was first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Julie, thank you.
No, I had actually lowered it, but I'm in agreement, Emily, I think with having the banner and the entire kitted out situation. And I'm also very much in favor of Pride as a place where we show up. That's all.
Okay, you want to lower your hand then, Julie, please? Thank you. Ann Cowden.
I am in concurrence with what you're saying. And I think with the 4th of July, we can always do, shall we say, a more inclusive 4th of July that symbolically represents a good deal more of what America is than what we usually see with the 4th of July situation. And I could see a coexist banner as part of that. And there are all sorts of ways we could be very creative with the 4th of July presentation that might not warm the cockles of some people's hearts in this town, but would allow a statement to be made by those of us who feel that what we're doing is very important and that they're aware of it. And they're aware of their own hearts and minds around these issues.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to be heard? I know Precious wants to move on to her next topic.
Yeah, why don't we listen to Sherry and then we'll move on to the last part.
Okay,
Thank you. So I guess I would, if we're gonna do, if it turns out that we discuss that we are gonna do something in 4th of July, I guess I would ask that we have some real meaningful discussions about it and not just talk about coexisting, but talk about if there are ways to bring forward that the 4th of July is not necessarily an Independence Day for a lot of people in this country, and bring awareness to that. That which is a slightly different take, to me, a slightly different nuance than we're all coexisting. But again, a recognition and I can't think of the other word right now, but a recognition of that. And acknowledgement, and what can we do to change that, or whatever, the moving forward. Because I personally have a lot of problems now with 4th of July. So it's hard for me. So that's why I would want to see something in there.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I think it does require a lot of deep conversation, and we'll move on to our last topic. And this one, as I mentioned, part of it is because I'm in academia, but also the overall way in which history is recorded, I think is very important. And also we talked about in our commission with Sherry and Julie of how do we document beyond maybe just our agenda and some of the documents that we have already, the work that our commission is doing, and also maybe some of the DEI issues and topics that have come up within this year and throughout time. Archives are really important in being able to see the progress and growth of regions, and being able to see the change throughout history. And a lot of our history has been written by people of certain types of privilege. And so being able to have a type of inclusive documentation in history is very important. We feel as a subcommittee, whether it's even just documenting the events that we attend and how we attend them, the events that are related to DEI issues, as well as maybe some other events that we throw or participate in. If any of us are in media outlets, Gina.
Thank you. I think it's important to archive and have documentation also. And when I hear you say that, Precious, I think first off, you've done 3 things that come to mind that I think you should archive right now. And that is that you're here. This commission is here. This is a first. Never happened in Ashland. That's number 1. Number 2, we've never had any request of a DEI manager or anything like that. And the ball is moving. And number 3, something that's happening, it seems, we'll find out Monday, is that there'll actually be a calendar that represents everybody. That's never happened before. I mean, Joe says 9 weeks. I look at this commission, look at what you've accomplished. So, those are 3 things that I think you can document right now.
Thank you, Gina. It's really, really important. So this is also open to suggestions of ways that we can document things. One of the things that we talked about in our subcommittee meeting was possibly having a type of seasonal newsletter or some kind of brief publication which documents what we did as a commission or individually throughout the seasons. This is a lot of work. I used to be an editor of my college newsletter, so I know that the layout is one thing, but the writing is also a lot. So that's something to think about. Also photos, things like that. So I don't expect us to come to any conclusion right now, but possibly in the future, this is something that we could talk about, but also hopefully in the near future too, so we can continue or actively participate in some kind of archive and collect evidence. As a person who has collected evidence about Japanese American people, I know that it's very hard to find certain types of artifacts, especially as time passes. So being able to know what we would like as a commission and how we would like to document our progress throughout time.
Ann Cowden had something to say before.
I just want to clarify that whatever kind of 4th of July parade we do, that's what I was trying to say. We don't want to make it as it is traditionally. We want to make it reflect all the changes that have happened. And I just thought of one idea, which probably, I don't know if it's any good, but you could almost have a parade with, this is not going to sound good, guys, Ku Klux Klan at the very beginning. Because I know, but 100 years ago, that's who was marching down Main Street in Ashland. Okay, that is our history. Whether we like it or not, that is our history. And that then you could have marked decades go by to show the changes, and hopefully, you know, where we are today is better, but we still are fighting some of those white supremacist issues. So I just wanted everyone to know I want it as broad-based as possible and as accurate about real history as possible.
Okay, I'm going to exercise chair prerogative and say that the discussion about the 4th of July and how we're going to do the 4th of July should be vetted first fully by the subcommittee. And then we should have the opportunity for a full discussion about it. So I'm going to exercise chair priority there and continue forward. I think that will be the subject of a lot of discussion, and I think is a non-starter for many people in this Zoom room, including myself. So that's how I feel. Anya, did you want to say something?
I have been pretty quiet, and I think what I'll just posit here is that, to be clear, when I arrived in Ashland, it was shared with me that this wasn't just 100 years ago. So I want to be really, really clear that I will not be marching in any parade, part of this commission or not, where there are white supremacists present or a part. I will not. And so I will just simply recuse myself.
Anya, I totally get it. And that's why I said that it's an important thing that we have a full discussion about it. And it may be a situation where we all learn something from each other that will help us coalesce and work together as a group.
Thank you. Thank you for your suggestions and ideas. I won't point out what book, but it's a book that you can find at gift stores in Ashland. And I was really excited to read it because it was about the history of Ashland. And one of the reasons why I thought about archiving was because in that book, there's actually a chapter about the KKK. And I felt it was very upsetting the way that the author talked about how the KKK presence in Ashland was not, he said it was not like the KK presence in the South. And so I had to almost stop reading that book because the way that he kind of watered down the presence of the KKK in Oregon and kind of like talked about how it was not as strong as it was in the South, and that they were not as violent. So I just couldn't continue on with that book. But that is really kind of also what inspires the idea of writing our own history of Ashland, especially if we want to commemorate and also document the progress that marginalized identities have created leadership, or the progress that they've created within our region. So making sure that we are part of that history as well. So that is some of the 3 topics that we talked about, and there's no conclusion to any of them. They're ongoing ones, and please continue to reach out to Julie, Sherry, and myself with your ideas and your concerns and questions and all kinds of suggestions, because the suggestions part is really important in the directions of the direction of how and where we move towards in terms of holidays and events. Thank you.
Thank you, Precious, for a complete and full report, and we'll wait to revisit all of these topics after you all meet. But I'm going to switch up the agenda a little bit because it's 6:17, and I think we just bumped into something that I would like to make sure that we discuss. There was an email last night in the issues relating to the items for the future agenda about a proposed DEI engagement for the commission, and to ask if people are interested in doing that. And then I said, or then Ann said, if so, this will be an agenda item for the April Surge meeting to discuss what this engagement looks like and when it could happen. Anya, is there anything else you'd like to add to this? I think at this point, all we wanted to do was to sort of get a sense of the group. And I noticed that we're down participants. Ann Seltzer, I'm making sure we still have a quorum, and I have not asked for any motions on purpose because of that. So
Okay.
We're good?
We have seven members, so we're fine.
Okay.
One,
So
two.
Anya, is there anything else you'd like to talk about regarding the DEI engagement?
Yeah, just to offer that, as we think about, we've put forward this proposal, we're, waiting to hear what the result of that proposal is going to be. And in the meantime, I think we still have actionable things that we need to take into consideration as a commission. And it sounds like a lot of these things center around DEI. So the recommendation was to see if people had interest in us doing some type of DEI strategy work together. It could be an engagement, it could be sharing what, so that we're not having to pay for something. I could share what we're doing within OSF, give the same kind of engagements that we do at OSF and share that, and then have folks have the ability to kind of, meditate on that or give thought to the way that we utilize that work to move forward, if it's something that people are interested in. It just seems like, given that this is a surge commission and we're talking about DEI at the kind of larger frame, that it's something that should be offered. And I'm happy to do it and to engage with folks, or to work with people to do it, either way.
I believe this is something we should be doing as a commission. I believe that it would be a helpful thing for you to do that, Anya, particularly in light of the conversation that we just had. Okay. So I would therefore hope that I'd just like to hear from other people, even if you're not comfortable saying anything out loud, then please just stick it in the chat. Is this something that people would like to do? Because when we're prioritizing things that go on the agenda, Anya, what do you think about it? Like a half hour, 45 minutes? I really need to make sure that this is something the commission wants to do. I don't want to do this top down, and I know you don't either.
No, I absolutely don't. I just want to offer it and give people an opportunity to think about their participation. And I do think it would probably take, like, if we're going to do it in like an engagement way, then it may take like 45 minutes, and then we leave time for Q&A, or I'm not sure how you would want to do that. Go ahead, Ann.
So what I'm thinking is maybe we have a special meeting, you have a special meeting that's devoted just to the DEI engagement, rather than trying to squeeze it into an agenda that you have multiple items on. So it
Makes
could
sense.
be that at the April meeting, you decide, yes, let's do it next Thursday, or whatever the timeline is that works for Anya. But just know that having a special meeting is an option rather than trying to
Cram it
squeeze
into
something into an existing meeting.
But I'd just like to hear from other people. what
So-
your
so-
thoughts are.
Yeah,
I think it's
Sherry,
really important, and I thank you for bringing it up, and I think we should do it. And I like the idea of maybe having a special meeting dedicated just to it.
anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to share on this? All right, I'm gonna pop the question. Do other people want to do this? If you could just give me a yes or an, maybe you're not comfortable giving me a yes or a no.
So
Sherry?
I will, honestly, I'm not sure what this is that you're asking. I'm right. So I don't know.
All right, so why don't we give people, why don't, Anya, if you're willing to, maybe at the next meeting, you could describe more fully sort of what you're thinking about? And we can then hear what their reaction is. Okay, maybe at this point, it's not full enough. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Anya. All right, then the other thing is, because I think this is a short thing, is Ann Seltzer sent out an email about an opportunity that I think we absolutely need to do for the Housing Production Strategy Advisory Committee. And Ann Seltzer, if you could please describe what it is, I would really appreciate it.
So beyond what, I hope that everybody had a chance to read it. Beyond what I've described, I just want to underscore that there's room for 2 surge commissioners. There could be 2 people that even tag team each other. You would serve certainly as a liaison back to the full commission to keep the full commission apprised of what this committee is working on. It's a limited commission, short in duration. You'd be committing to about 4 to 5 meetings over the course of 9 months. The rub really is it's a steep learning curve. You will have to get up to speed with the other people that are already on this, that will be on this commission, with those technical documents that would be provided to you. But ultimately, what this committee is charged to do, and this is required by the state, is to develop its housing production strategy. In other words, what are the strategies that the city of Ashland is going to incorporate into its comprehensive plan? And I made a little note in that description of what the comp plan is. Again, that's required by the state, and how you're going to further implement these recommendations that have come out of the technical documents. So I'm making this up. Let's say it's one of the things is increasing density building, more multifamily buildings. So changing the current ordinance to allow greater density. That would be something that would be incorporated into that plan, adopted by the city council, sent to the state, and then incorporated into the comprehensive plan. Seeing that implementation of those strategies could take 2 years, it could take 5 years. So this isn't a committee where things are going to happen right away. It's developing the vision and the future, but then by law, those things have to be accomplished. So again, I go back to it is extremely important that Surge has a voice on this in this committee, and it requires homework. So.
Okay, is there anybody who would like to take on this work to do this? I'm seeing Precious's hand, I'm seeing Julie Gillis's hand, I'm seeing Ann Cowden's hand, and I don't know at this point if you're all offering to be on this or if it's a question or a comment. So let me find out first if there's a question or a comment and then get to the, okay, Precious, your question or comment?
Yes, I'm not volunteering for this, part, but I just wanted to mention whoever does at Southern Oregon University, they had a housing task force. And I think they still do have a housing task force in which they talk about housing for students. I was on it, but then I had to leave for my, to give birth. But if you are on this type of subcommittee, that you might want to connect with SLU and see what discussions they've had about their housing task force.
Right, so Precious, the director of housing at SOU is on this committee. So that
great.
information is part of this
Okay,
production strategy.
thank you.
Julie, do you have a question or are you volunteering?
I'm interested, but I don't want to step in the way of anyone else that might. I'm already doing some subcommittee work, so if anybody else has a burning desire to be involved, I would step out of the way, but I'm certainly willing to participate.
Okay, we can have more than one person. Ann Cowden.
I would be very willing to tag team with someone like Julie and be able to do it that way. So we have at least two brains working together, and also that we can, split the time at commission or at meetings. So I sign up for that part.
Great. So this is Julie and Ann Cowden, and it's done.
So Julie and
We
Ann,
just
you'll be
accomplished something.
hearing from me separately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. Here is where we're at right now. It's 6:28. I'm going to end this meeting at 6:30 because you know me, I start at 5 and I end at 6:30. Okay. Gina, you can have, as our city commissioner, you can have the last 2 minutes, and everything else is going to get kicked over until April, unless somebody has something that if they don't say it right now, they will bust. Gina.
Okay, seeing no one spontaneous combust, I'll be quick. And what I have is I have some contacts that I am going to email to Ann so that as this commission moves forward, seeing whom else you might want to consider inviting to the commission. I had Truth to Power. These are students at Ashland High School. I have Public Arts Commission, along with Say Their Name Collective, because I think that that's important that you meet with them regarding the possible memorial in Railroad Park. The Planning Commission also, when we talk about inclusivity and equity, the Planning Commission and Housing Commission, they are important, I believe, for this commission to meet with. And then of course there's Travel Ashland in the chamber. So I have their contact information and I was sending that over just to keep this commission engaged in moving forward. You're doing a great job and I think my time is ticking. Thank you everybody and have a good night.
Okay, wait, Julie Gillis has her hand up. Are you busting, Julie? No, okay,
I
good.
just
All right, so
forgot to
everybody's
lower it.
everybody's brains are still in their heads. That's a good beginning. We are absolutely continuing to move forward on in any way that we can to do everything that we can to bring true, as best we can do it, racial justice, social equity to this little burg that we live in. So with that in mind, good night, everybody. And I will see you all in a month, and I'll see many of you before that.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Good evening.
Good night.